If you're a woman and you've been married for a while and still haven't experienced an orgasm, or wish your orgasms are more reliable and meaningful, or if you're questioning whether what you've experienced actually counts as an orgasm, well, welcome. This episode is for you. I want you to know right from the start that my purpose in recording this episode is this. You're not broken, you're not defective, and there is absolutely hope for you. You might be sick and tired of hearing that you're not broken, but please hear me out. Listening to just this episode alone may or may not give you the inspiration, grit, determination, or the very solution you need in your quest for pleasurable, meaningful, and satisfying sexual experiences. But it's worth the effort to listen and apply the principles I'll present because I believe the joy we feel in our marriage, and especially in our sexual relationship with our spouse, lies not in our circumstances, but in the focus and purpose that we give our situation. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. I'm Dan Purcell. I've been in the business of helping married couples find joy in their sexual relationship and overcoming sexual challenges in marriage for over 8 years now. As a sex coach, I've helped many wives in my practice find pleasure and joy in orgasm as well. And this topic has a special place for me in my heart because it took my wife and I years in our own marriage to learn how to orgasm. And I'm grateful for the resources that helped us, and I hope to pay it forward today as a resource for you. Today, we're going to have an honest, loving conversation about something that affects more women than you might think. If this feels vulnerable to even listen to, I get it. But I promise you're in a safe place here. Before we dive in, I want to address something. If you're listening to this and feeling frustrated, maybe even a little angry that this is still an issue for you, those feelings are completely valid. You might be thinking, hey, Dan, I've tried everything. I've read the books, I've followed the advice, and I'm still here. I still struggle to have an orgasm. I see you, and I want you to know that your experience matters. And everything we experience in life, even our negative and frustrating experiences, can turn to our benefit in the long run if we let it be so. Whatever your frustration, I encourage you to use it as an impetus to draw you nearer to God. My view of God is that He's a loving, perfect heavenly parent that is a giver of good gifts, cheering you along in every effort that you make that's good. He wants nothing but the very best for you and your long-term development. So I encourage you to prayerfully ask God for inspiration. What stands in the way? What stands in the way of being able to have an orgasm, or what stands in the way of me having more confidence in my sexuality? And patiently listen to His gracious guidance while you do all that you can to take full responsibility for yourself. And I know this episode might be a little weird coming from a man telling women how to orgasm, but trust me, I've learned so much from my own experience in my own marriage, my own professional training, and my experience working with couples on this very topic. Let me start with 7 fundamental truths about orgasm that I want you to understand. First is just about every woman on the planet is capable of experiencing orgasm. The rare exceptions involve like nerve damage or specific medical conditions. But here's the key. Just because you're capable of it doesn't mean you're born knowing how. Orgasm is something you need to learn how to do, kind of like learning how to ride a bike or any other skill. You weren't born knowing how to ride a bike, and you probably weren't born knowing how to orgasm either. It can take practice and effort, just like other learned skills. And individuals learn at their own pace and in their own ways also. Second, orgasm is an involuntary reflex involving both the sympathetic and parasympathetic parts of the autonomic nervous system. In other words, it takes a combination of just the right amount of relaxation and stimulation and letting your body do what bodies do. Like other reflexes, like sneezing, or that little jump you get under your knee when someone taps, right below the knee. Orgasm happens when you've received sufficient stimulation and you cross the threshold and your body takes over from there. So sometimes it's just learning how to have more of the right type of stimulation to get you over that threshold. Third, orgasms feel good. Really, really good. Some researchers think that it's the most pleasure our bodies are capable of experiencing. But exactly how it feels is honestly hard to describe. Some people say, oh, you'll just know you've had one when you've had one, which exactly isn't helpful if you're questioning if you've had one. But here's what's important. It's possible to have orgasms that are weak or small, and others that are massive, powerful, overwhelming, earth-shattering. So, Don't discount a subtle experience just because it wasn't earth-shattering. Fourth, there's an irony about having an orgasm. It's that you can't make yourself orgasm any more than you can make yourself sneeze or fall asleep on demand. Think about it. Attempting to will yourself to sleep actually keeps you from falling asleep. This similar experience is what gets in the way of many women trying to have an orgasm. The harder you try to achieve an orgasm in the moment, the more elusive it becomes. So your effort and work in creating an orgasmic experience comes from cultivating the right conditions, not in your force of will making the goal of orgasm happen on command, if that makes sense. And you might not want to hear it, but being relaxed is probably the most important piece of that orgasmic environment to nurture. The body's natural sexual arousal process is a relaxing of microscopic muscles channeling more blood flow into your genitals, not a contracting of muscles. So I know that telling you to relax and not be tired might seem like impossible tasks that you feel I'm just adding more to your mental load. But promise me, prioritizing this, finding help from others where you can, might actually be the key for you making progress in the area. Making space in your life where you can actually be rested, free from distractions, and be in a good mood. That should be your goal. And then let pleasure take over from there, and you will be going in the right direction. Number 5, fear might be what's stopping you from committing to going all the way to orgasm. And here's what I mean. Here's a metaphor. When I was 13 years old, my family got a trampoline, and we spent a lot of time with my friends and siblings on that trampoline. My younger brother could do a backflip, but I could not. I would get close to committing to try, but at the last moment, I get scared and I wouldn't quite allow myself. I didn't have the guts to let myself fall backwards out of fear of landing on my neck or something like that. So fast forward nearly 3 decades. Late last year, I was jumping on our own trampoline in our backyard with my kids, having a great time, and my teenage son wants to do a backflip and is asking me for advice. Let me tell you, it's hard for me to tell him what to do when I can't even do a backflip myself, right? So I decided then and there to put my fear aside and just go for it, fully committed. And if I landed on my neck, so be it. And would you believe it? I jumped high, I tucked my legs in, and I let my legs go over my head backwards, and I landed, even on my feet, my first backflip, which earned me major cool dad points in the process. The crazy thing is, once I've done a backflip once, I can now do it over and over again. I'm confident. It was getting over that fear of I might land on my neck. I just had to set it aside long enough and just to relax and trust my body and just commit and go for it. The same goes for learning how to orgasm. It's often about learning how to really let go. And sometimes we're afraid to let go. We like to be in control in our life. And orgasm is an experience where you're actually not in control of everything. And that's scary. So when we say relax into it, it really means this process of letting go and just letting pleasure take over. Number 6 is there's no wrong way to learn to have an orgasm, but it is a learning exercise. It does require your brain to get used to orgasming in at least one method or one way. When you repeat a learning exercise over and over, your brain creates neural pathways. Think of it like turning a bumpy dirt road into highways, so it can make certain tasks come more easier naturally. The most reliable way to learn how to orgasm is to take matters into your own hands. To be more explicit, I'm talking about getting comfortable, undressing, putting some lubricant on your fingers, and touching your own vulva. It's important to approach touch with an attitude of curiosity and follow the pleasure without a specific outcome other than an open exploration of what it feels good in your own body. Touching yourself might feel uncomfortable to hear, but please stay with me here. By touching yourself, you get an immediate feedback loop of what's good and what's not. Self-knowledge helps your brain grow those vital neural pathways needed in order for you to learn how to experience orgasm. Again, there's no wrong way to learn here. Some women grow these neural pathways by relaxing in the bathtub and letting a gentle trickle of water run over their clitoris. Others learn by getting in a swimming pool and holding on the edge of the pool where the pump jets water into the pool and allowing a gentle push of water against their groin area. Others buy a vibrator and set aside time to explore their bodies. And I'll talk more about vibrators in a moment, but the point is, It takes intentional learning, courage, and some creativity to learn what works for you and your body. Now, I give these all as suggestions. It's important to listen to your own internal moral compass. For example, if you're uncomfortable or feel immoral doing any of these things alone, you can absolutely invite your spouse to participate in the process. I don't want you feeling guilty, dirty, or sinful while trying these things, because that will likely associate that sexual activity with guilt, feeling dirty, or sinful in the future, which is not what we want. That's not a good outcome. That being said, it's crucial to understand that it's not your husband's task to give you orgasms. He can support you, help with arousal, and collaborate with you, but ultimately, you're the one that allows the experience to happen. An orgasm is something you receive and experience by tuning into your own body, letting go, and choosing to be present in the moment. It's not his experience. That doesn't diminish him, his role, or the sexual act. It actually enhances the shared experience, right? Because when you take ownership of your pleasure, you're not just passively waiting for something to happen to you. You're making it happen, and you're choosing to let him in the process. You're choosing to share your body and your pleasure in a deeply intimate way. And that's not only empowering, it's freeing for both of you. Number 7, it's okay to use tools to help you. Sometimes you can increase your body's sensitivity by applying what's called a scream cream, and I put that in quotes. It's like a type of lubricant with a small amount of menthol or another compound that makes your nerves a little more sensitive. It wakes your nerves up, increasing their sensitivity. This is especially helpful if you find yourself in the category of a woman who has no problem touching herself, but you just don't feel any different or you don't feel any type of arousal. Some more sensitivity enhancements might help you. Another beneficial tool is a sex toy, like a vibrator. God has designed certain parts of our body to feel good when stimulated in particular ways. The nerves of the clitoris respond very well to certain types of vibration, hence why they're a popular choice for women wanting to achieve orgasm reliably. For many couples, they view vibrators as an inspired invention. It's a godsend, wondering how they could ever find pleasure in sex without it. It's common for couples to be concerned about using a toy or a vibrator from a moral standpoint. I view vibrator use similar to money use. Is money good or bad? Well, I guess it depends on how you spend your money, right? A vibrator doesn't necessarily take anything away from your marriage because you can use a vibrator as a tool to increase pleasure and enhance something special in your own marriage that wasn't present before, allowing the two of you to bond closer as a couple that you couldn't easily do otherwise. I get asked often, what's the best kind of vibrator to get? The answer is that there is no one answer, despite all the marketing material you might see. It's because genital nerve configurations vary from person to person. For instance, if you look at the pattern of the veins on your arm compared to, let's say, your spouse's arm, you'll find that they're quite different. You both have veins, but the direction, the branches, and the placement of those veins on your arm, they're going to differ. Just the same way, the nerves in your genitals, likewise, also vary in their patterns and branches from person to person. So, when choosing a vibrator, I recommend preparing yourself to spend a little extra money and getting 2 or 3 different categories or types of vibrators and see which ones your body responds to the best. And once you narrow down the category that works for you, then you can invest in different vibrators in that category because you kind of have a better idea of what your body responds to well. Now, let's say you've tried all of those things and you still have not gotten results. It's time to dive in a little bit deeper. I want you to know 2 important events coming up that you'll definitely want to participate in. First is on September 2nd, we're starting our next round of our men's and women's cohorts. This is ideal for women and men that are ready to experience something different when it comes to intimacy in their marriage. These are small groups, limited to just 6 to 10 women or 6 to 10 men. In these groups, you'll do a deep dive into all things intimacy in your marriage in a safe and supportive environment, led by one of our expert coaches. A recent graduate of our women's group emailed me recently to say that she was surprised at how safe she felt with the other ladies in her group and how much she had in common with them, and how wonderful it was to feel supported and seen. And she had so many aha moments that made significant shifts for her in her own marriage. And you'll find all these details of these groups on our website by going to getyourmarriageon.com, clicking on coaching, and the women's or men's groups. The second event to put on your calendar is our virtual intimacy getaway on September 26th or 27th. This is the last weekend in September. This is where you either send your kids to grandma's or you get your own hotel room and join me live Friday night, Saturday morning, and Saturday night in 3 sessions for a special getaway with you and your spouse. This is for couples that are looking for some fun and some romance. They want to explore something new sexually and grow closer together as a couple. I'll guide you through specific techniques accompanied by some really fun, sexy homework through the weekend to make it a memorable, romantic, and sexually exciting weekend for the two of you. This is an all-new program, different from what we've taught in previous virtual getaways or retreats. And you'll find all those details on my website under events or click on the link. In my experience, problems achieving orgasm fall into 3 categories. They're relational problems, physical problems, or psychological problems, or a combination of the 2 or 3 of those. Let me share a few stories from each category. And my intent to share these stories is to give you hope and kind of set this framework for you. Sometimes women have a hard time with sexuality in general, or orgasm specifically, because they don't view that it's something that belongs to them, but rather something they do or offer to their husbands. This belief interferes with her ability to take ownership of her own sexual self and denies her of the crucial spiritual development that comes from sexual development in the context of a marriage relationship. Let me share with you a story to illustrate this point. I got this story from Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. She's a therapist and worked with a couple where it was his second marriage and her first marriage. His first wife had passed away, and they'd had, with his first wife, a great sexual relationship. And now they're in the second marriage where she was quickly accepted to the family. She became a wonderful mom to his children, and they had what seemed like a great marriage, except when it came to sex. She came from a background where sex wasn't discussed much growing up, and she had mixed attitudes about it and her own body. So they went to Dr. Jennifer, and as a therapist, she gave her all the regular exercises such as the ones I outlined for you earlier in this episode. But she still wasn't making progress with finding pleasure in sex. Neither did she find any real desire to make sex great for her and in her marriage. She just did it for him to keep him around. Then one day, something shifted in their marriage. Her husband sensed all along that she didn't really want a sexual relationship because sex made her uncomfortable. He sensed all of his efforts to get her to want sex was just not working. So on this particular day, he turned to her and with seriousness and all honesty, he said, "Look, I give up trying to make you want something you clearly don't want. I'm no longer going to try to get you to want something you don't want because that's not who I want to be in this relationship. I can't deny that I really want a sexual relationship with you, but if you don't want that, I'm not going to make you want it like I do. I just don't see this marriage turning into something that's going to be a sexual relationship. And as painful as it is for me to acknowledge, I think that's the truth. Perhaps we make this marriage be one where we're just good friends, we raise the kids, and after they're gone, maybe then I can decide if I'm ready to move on to something else or not. At least I owe this much to our children and to you to be committed for a while." That was a shocking and not shocking revelation at the same time. It was not shocking because he was just being honest and clear about the truth of the situation as it was. No sugarcoating it, no fantasy, right? Saying it how it was. But it was also shocking because as a couple, they've been pretending like, oh, if we just get enough help, if we just see the right therapist, if we do enough exercises, then you're going to one day want sex with me, right? That was the fantasy they were living in. And it was that. It was a fantasy. We were pretending. And they just realized they could no longer pretend like things will improve with the direction that they're going. They don't want to live in that fantasy anymore. Anyway, the therapist expected the wife to be relieved that he was giving up on pursuing her sexually. She expected her to think like, oh, finally, I don't have to pretend to try anymore. What a relief. But in this case, it actually had the opposite effect. Because the wife could no longer hide behind the persona of someone who appeared to be trying, but deep inside really didn't care that much about her sexual development. And for his part, he didn't pressure her anymore. He just accepted where she was and worked on being okay with that, as painful it was for him. This led her to a moment of crisis. She realized she was turning into her mother. she realized she didn't want to set aside her sexual development any longer because her mother and her past experiences, they taught her that sex was kind of dirty. Anyway, she needed to know for herself, and for the first time in her life, she actually tried the exercises that the therapist had given her, for real, for herself, not for her husband and not to keep him happy. Anyway, within a week, she had her first orgasm, and her relationship with herself and with her husband completely changed. I like that true story because sometimes what's keeping you back from orgasm is that you need to decide to do it for yourself, not for someone else. Sometimes it takes a crisis, unfortunately, to get you to the point where you take yourself seriously enough to decide who you're going to be in your relationship and what you're going to do. Sometimes relationship pressures interfere with your ability to orgasm. Releasing yourself from that pressure can help you the most in those situations. This is why I believe it's so important to work on the emotional foundation of your marriage first. Keep dating your spouse. Invest in each other. Learn how to love each other deeply and honestly. Invest in each other. A sense of one's sexual self is highly tied to a sense of freedom. If you don't feel free, especially in your relationship, to explore or not explore or understand your sexual self, you can't truly understand it. There's another true story of a woman who was so caught up in the demands of motherhood that she just didn't feel like herself. Her husband encouraged her to find a hobby and to go out and try something to develop herself, and she finally relented and did. This wife was always interested in dance, so she signed up for an adult women's dance class in her area. And she felt so guilty and selfish at first for leaving her kids behind while she went and did something, just for herself. Turns out she actually really liked dance, and over time, she gained self-confidence and a sense of coming home to herself. And at the same time, she started to have orgasms during sex, a first for her. Freedom and self are essential components of full sexual expression. I believe it's inspiring and rooted in goodness when women find that they can really belong to themselves and in the act of sex. And that applies to men also. But we're talking to women today. These women I'm talking about, these are those that find that sex is a place where they can go to relax. It's a place where they can play. It's a place where they can escape the pressures of motherhood and of life. And it's a place they can be pampered and belong to themselves. They find sex to be that place that nourishes them, replenishes them, and is a place that fuels their creative capacity. All of this is possible because a relationship is such that there's a sense of freedom, void of the pressure to perform, and it's all balanced with belonging to make this all work. It's worth the effort for couples to work together, to get help if you need it, to make adjustments to their relationship dynamic so that sexual expression, belonging, and freedom are all synonymous in their marriage. Sometimes, learning how to finally orgasm could just be a matter of getting a better sexual education. And by the way, your body is your best teacher in this regard. A woman shared anonymously in our private Facebook group that for the longest time, she expected orgasm from intercourse. And I don't blame her for thinking that way. Too much of our sexual depictions in our culture tend to be very male-centric, right? Anyway, it wasn't until later that she learned that only about 30% of women can reliably orgasm in that way. Most women orgasm from direct clitoral stimulation, with many studies indicating that receiving oral sex to be the most reliable and pleasurable way to reach climax. And I did a podcast episode on the topic of cunnilingus just a few weeks ago, and you're welcome to go check that out for more detail on that topic. Another couple saw a professional to help her reach orgasm. After getting to know the couple for a little bit, the therapist discovered that sex, on average for them, lasted about 10 minutes. Now, this couple assumed that he could go from start to finish in that time, and she should be able to too. And when she couldn't, they thought something was wrong with her. She also felt guilty asking for more time and attention put on her, thinking he might get bored or tired or not be interested. The reality? Most women need 25 or more minutes of stimulation to achieve orgasm. And I believe that's not a bug, it's a feature that women need 25 minutes or more of stimulation. Women are generally so generous and giving to others for so long. It's about time you get to relax and enjoy something that feels really good, to be on the receiving end for a while. One woman put it as, "This is my time to get pampered after all the giving I give other people." I love that attitude. And most husbands I know are delighted that it takes her a long time to come. It's more time for him to enjoy her beauty and demonstrate love to her. Bottom line, ladies, don't feel guilty. Take the time you need. Finally, there's a lot of psychological reasons that can prevent orgasm. Discomfort with your own body makes it hard to achieve orgasm because the whole time you're trying to receive stimulation, you're thinking about how much you don't like your own body. That can have a real dampening effect on your pleasure. It can feel uncomfortable deciding to touch your own body or buy your first vibrator. I get it. The discomfort that you might have in doing something wrong or dirty is something that you should pay attention to, but also give it some air and light. We're often afraid to try new things because they're unfamiliar, and we're afraid of the unknown. And I completely respect your decisions. This must be your choice. But it's my experience working with couples that once someone realizes God's goodness and the gift that sexuality can bring to a marriage, that belief or that testimony can be the catalyst to have the courage to step into the unknown with hope that it leads to something much richer and better in the marriage. Another woman shared with me that it wasn't until she learned how to calm down her own nervous system through mindfulness and breathing techniques. In other words, not to be in fight or flight so often. It allowed her space to feel more connected to her body and mindfully enjoy pleasant sensations. Another woman who faced sexual abuse as a child sought professional help. She recognized that the way she coped with her abuser was to disassociate herself from her body to the point that it became intuitive for her to do so, even in a loving marriage to her husband over 10 years. So through the professional's help, she learned to heal from the abuse and reconnect with her body and sex. It was not an overnight process, and some days it felt like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But her stubborn determination to heal was a joyful experience for the whole couple. Sometimes what's preventing orgasm is a lack of psychological arousal. In our podcast archives, if you go back to episode number 121, it features my guest, Ashley, who shared how she learned to orgasm after being married for several years. Countless tears and endless frustration after trying all the things and still no outcome. What finally worked for Ashley was reading material that got her mind sexually aroused with possibility and excitement. On this particular day, her husband had a work trip across the country, and he invited her to join him for a weekend getaway at the tail end of his work trip. So on the airplane flight over, she read a novel that her neighbor had given her that had a steamy part in it. Anyway, it got her imagination going about what she could do with her husband. When she arrived at the hotel, she surprised him by asking if they could make love right then, right away, because she was in the mood. And to her absolute joy and relief, she had her first orgasm. Once she had it, it became easier for her to have orgasms in the future. The key for her was that she needed more psychological stimulation, feeling sexy in her head. My point isn't necessarily to encourage you to go read novels that get you excited and stimulated. I mean, that could help you. But just don't underestimate the power of getting your mind in the right frame. The reality is that your brain is your largest and most important sex organ. So put it to work to serve your marriage by giving it something sexually exciting to think about. I believe the spiritual, sexual, and psychological aspects overlap significantly. For another woman I worked with, it was her ability to accept God's forgiveness for her past, to forgive herself, and to give herself permission to feel wonderful with her caring and patient husband. That's what helped her learn how to orgasm. Sometimes women don't orgasm because by not orgasming, it's giving them power or privilege in the relationship. Let me explain. I worked with a couple where she could orgasm by herself, but never with her husband. And I found this fascinating because clearly she was capable of getting there, at least alone, but not with her husband. I suspected something might be off in their relationship. She said she wanted to be able to orgasm with him, but it was clear that he wanted that very badly also. After digging deeper into their relationship, I learned that their dynamic was such that he had tried for so long to get her to orgasm that by her not orgasming, she was asserting her individuality and agency and herself in the marriage. In other words, if she did orgasm with him, for her it would feel like capitulating, like admitting that she was wrong all the time and he is right. And why would anyone want to feel like a loser in that way if orgasm has that meaning tied to it, right? This highlights the importance of couples to work on making their relationship rooted in freedom and as a partnership of equals. When one takes a stance that they're superior to the other, it makes it difficult to maintain a passionate relationship long term. Before I conclude today, let me give husbands that are listening to this episode that wish their wife would have more orgasms some advice. First, your desire to help her experience more pleasure is good and valid. Why wouldn't a loving husband want the best for his wife, right? Second, be her cheerleader, not her critic. It doesn't help when you're checking in with her to see if she did her homework, if she read the book, if she listened to the podcast, and so on. Give her space to make it on her own time. If you have a tendency to take it personally that she's not having orgasms, and therefore you make it your goal that she has them, you are interfering with the process, and it makes it even harder for her to learn. Sometimes the best you can do is back off, calm the heck down, as I like to say, and be her number one cheerleader instead, allowing her to go at her pace, not yours. Third, approach intimate moments with your wife in the frame of, what sounds pleasurable for you tonight, rather than, would you like to have an orgasm? Although you may never say those words directly, what you convey matters. The former invites her to step into a place of pleasure and pampering, an often very inviting meeting, while the second invites her into a space of work. Work and sexy play are opposites. Sex should never feel like work, especially for your wife. Lastly, take the bigger picture into account. Most mothers are overwhelmed carrying the mental and emotional load for the household and the family. So, invite your wife to share in what areas you can shoulder various tasks to help run the family in a more fair and balanced way. By consistently working together to share the burden of the family, that can help both of you achieve goals of creating a little more margin, a little more space for enjoyment and relaxation to occur in your relationship. All right, friends, if you're still waiting for your first orgasm, please don't give up. Your body is capable of incredible pleasure, and you deserve to experience it. Whether your barriers are relational, physical, or psychological, or a combination of all three, there is hope for you. Remember, this isn't about performing for anyone else. This is about your relationship with your body, your own sexuality, and your own capacity for pleasure. You have permission to want this for yourself. You have permission to take the time you need. You have permission to explore and learn and grow. If you are feeling stuck, feel like sexual differences or problems having an orgasm and all the effects of that are affecting your relationship, or you need more personalized help navigating sexual challenges in your marriage, I have a free gift for you. There's an in-depth masterclass on my website, and you'll learn exactly why hundreds of couples are overcoming their barriers to find more joy in their sexual relationship every day in our program. And you can too. You'll find those details on my website, getyourmarriageon.com. Remember, you don't have to figure this out alone. There are people out there who understand, who've been trained to work in this area, who've been where you are, and who want to help you find the breakthrough you're looking for. Thank you for listening. Next week, I'm going to talk about eyes open sex, as well as the spicy topic of fellatio, so you don't want to miss it. Until then, be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and remember, you're not broken, you're just learning. Now, go get your marriage on.